My friends, we are in a war. It's a war not just for the heart and soul of America, it's a war for our children and our grandchildren. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine having a Michigan or an America where our children live under bondage, oppression, and Marxism. I can't even imagine that. That is beyond my understanding. 2 weeks ago today, we had an amazing election, as Rob was sharing, across the country. We had some great victories. One of them was Virginia, and Winsome Sears, who won the lieutenant governor, happens to be a good friend of my wife. And she said she's going to come to Michigan to campaign for me, so we are anxious about that. But the reality is there are 329 million Americans. Of that, in the adult population, I believe the number is only 64% of adults are registered to vote, of which only about 32% of them actually vote. Which means when you think about it, of the adult population, only about 17% is needed to elect a president. That's 1 in 5. Or in the off year, when I'm running, 1 in 8 will elect a governor. My friends, I'd like to let you know that as I am a student of history, Karl Marx has said this: if you can erase a nation's past, you can take it anywhere in the future. Mm-hmm. That's what's happened. That's what's happened in America. We are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving 1 week from Thursday. It's one of my favorite holidays. I don't know if anyone here has been to Plymouth Plantation, north of Boston. Anybody take that trip yet? It's worth going there with your kids and grandkids. It is an awesome experience. I remember the first time we went we have 4 grown children. 2 of them are 41 and 42. The others are 33 and 35, something like that. But we first went with the older set, and we had to go back with the second set. It was just such an amazing experience to be there on Thanksgiving, to understand exactly what the Pilgrims went through. And you know, in our generation, words are important. As they said, the message is very important. And as you know, the Pilgrims sat down with the Native Americans and they had a Thanksgiving meal. They also were told by their governor, Governor Bradford, to go to your meeting house and listen to your pastor and give thanks to God. That is the founding of our country. I am in this fight because I am convinced that if we don't get God right in this next election, everything else is going to go downhill. Under our watch, and I say this under my watch, we have watched God being removed from the school system, from culture. We've been told lies about the First Amendment, that there's this huge wall of separation between church and state. The church should stay in its lane, not address any cultural issues. But that's not how our nation was founded. Right. It's interesting because as you look at the Pilgrims, their generations coming up to the American Revolution, even the birth certificate of our country, known as the Declaration of Independence, it acknowledges God in 6 different terms, and even the Constitution after that, only 11 years later, is built upon the Judeo-Christian principles found in the Scriptures. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing document that has stood the test of time, and that's why I say I'm in this fight because of that. Mm-hmm. There are some things that concern us as Americans today. I want to address 4 of them really quickly. The first one is election. We've already addressed it. Sheila, thank you very much for standing up to the boards. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. But I would have never thought in my lifetime that parents at a school board would be viewed as domestic terrorists. Mm-hmm. That blows my mind. When I heard that, when I have been watching that, when I've been involved, I'm thinking to myself, this is not the Michigan I grew up in, this is not the America I grew up in, and we have to stand up and do something about it. Many of us have known that the public school system is broken. We've known that. I mean, it's not a shock. I served on Governor Engler's Sex, Drugs, and AIDS Revision Board in 1992. They needed a pastor in our community, so they chose me. And the reason why they chose me only being in the community for 3 or 4 years is because I was the most conservative pastor in the town in Farmington Hills. And they said, if our changes to the sex, drugs, and AIDS curriculum gets past you, Pastor Ralph, it'll get past any parent in the community. You know, it's interesting as we reflect on where we've come from, you know, I know you've heard it all, critical race theory, social emotional learning, we've heard all of those things. And what really bothered me back in 1992 with Governor Engler's, as we were rewriting that, and what is even worse today is the sex ed. Mm-hmm. My friends, it's pornography. We have to remove that from the school system. We have to allow our little kids to grow up and enjoy their innocence without being flooded with these stupid questions, as you mentioned, Sheila. We have to get away from that and allow our kids to grow up as you and I did in a free land and not being corrupted and warped by the stuff that's out there from the left. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The idea of election integrity is a big issue right now, as you know. I happened to have been at the TCF Center the day after the election. The Detroit Police Department was blocking Republican and independent poll watchers and poll workers. They couldn't get in. When I arrived, I came down the elevator, walked past where the counting room was because I was told we can't get in. I went up and I talked to Michonne and I talked to Mary Sheridan. And I said, ladies, what can I do? And they said, there's nothing you can do. Look around the room. There's 200 people sitting here. They can't even get in. And I said, I know I can get in. So I need to know what you want me to do once I get in. And they said, Ralph, you won't be able to get in. I said, give me your phone numbers. When I get in, I'll call you. So I went down and I pulled out my wallet and I showed the police officer my badge. And he simply said, come on in. And there was a sense of elation. I thought to myself, this is really cool. I got in. I get to call Michonne. I get to call Miriam. But the immediate drop in emotion was there are 200 people up in that room that shouldn't need a badge to get in there to be able to carry out their Michigan statutory rights. It blew my mind. Mm-hmm. But election is a big deal. I'm in favor of a full forensic audit because if you don't figure out what happened in 2020, my friends, it won't matter if I'm on the ballot or anyone else. Exactly. It'll get stolen again. Right. I saw the fraud with my own eyes. I wrote an affidavit. Shannon Bream on Fox News picked it up and she quoted me on that show. And it was something that to this day I'm still dumbfounded over. The idea of the economy is something that's horrible right now. I mean, you talked about linking Biden with Whitmer. It's just unconscionable because as we watch inflation rise, it's going to get worse. And the fact that people are getting paid to stay home, you know the stories. I don't have to sit here and tell you that, but I will tell you that as a governor candidate, I'm not just against what happened. If you go on my website, you'll see that I have real solutions and strategies to fix these things. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. On the back easel there is a poster board. I serve on the Council for National Policy. There are enough contacts with that group that I have that are able to bring sanity to our state, to lower taxes, cut the budget, and watch Michigan become a leader. That's why our vision is to make Michigan a lighthouse to the nation. I have enough contacts right now. I've signed a governor's pledge that I will not raise taxes while I'm governor. I'm also, right now, if you want to ask during questions and answers, the Q&A, I'm more than happy to give you some specifics. But the reality is, under my administration, you're going to see things turn around for Michiganders. People won't be moving out. Our young people won't be taking jobs elsewhere. They're going to want to stay in Michigan, and they're going to want to enjoy what you and I enjoyed growing up. Mm-hmm. We talk about safety, folks. This is a big issue to everybody all over the state. I don't care what your zip code is. Safety is a significant issue for everyone. You want your children to go to bed at night safely, to wake up the next day. Whether they go to school, play in the playground, you want them to be safe. As a police chaplain for 30 years, I've served on the Farmington Hills Crime Prevention Advisory Board. On that board, I have seen the community connect with the police department. Yes, there are examples. Yes, there are situations that are heartbreaking. But the reality is when you build those relationships between the police and the community, and something heartbreaking happens, you don't have riots, you don't have people threatening, you don't have, you look at that situation and you say, we know the police, they were just at our door, they brought the canine dog to our kid's birthday party, we were involved in all kinds of things with them, and that creates such a harmonious situation in which community and law enforcement not only are working together, but they're promoting ideals that pull the family, that pull the government, and that pull the police department in a unified direction. My friends, as I wrap this up, before some Q&A, I wanted to share with you a couple things that really are powerful. As I mentioned, I love history. I started a PhD program in history, and it's powerful. And I love American history. And this is relevant to us here tonight. There were 4 battles that were huge during the Revolutionary War. There was the battle at Lexington, battle at Concord. There was the battle on the road to Boston, and then there was Bunker Hill. And the interesting thing is that when you look at the battle at Lexington, the history books will tell you there were 700 British who came into Lexington, and there were 700 who met them. 70 who met them. 700 versus 70. That's true, but it's only partially true. The 70 that met them were from the local church. It was Reverend Jonas Clark's church, his men that showed up to protect the city against the British as they were coming in to loot, steal, and kill people. Deacon John Parker said to the group that was there, because the pastor, Jonas Clark, was not there, John Parker said to the group, you remember what pastor's been teaching us, we don't fire first. But when they fire on us, if they want the war to begin, let it begin here in Lexington. So they fired on them. They marched through Lexington, they're on their way to Concord. The news gets to Concord before the British troops that the British are coming. At that point, there are 300 people who showed up to fight against the 700. History books will tell you that. It's not completely true. The numbers are accurate, but it was Reverend William Emerson's church, the men from his church, that showed up to do battle. And you know what they said? They've already fired on us. They fired on our brothers and sisters in Lexington. We don't have to wait any longer. Mm-hmm. On the road to Boston, a 19-mile road, there were 4,500 Americans lining that road to take out the tyranny that was before them. My friends, I share that with you for 2 reasons. One, people of faith understand that we need to stand against tyranny. It doesn't matter if it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Old Testament when they said, King, we will not bow to your statue. Whether it was Daniel when his First Amendment right of religious expression was being threatened and they said you can't pray anymore. What did Daniel do? He went into the window. He went to the window and he prayed publicly and said, bring it on, fellas. In the first century church, we see the New Testament church where they said we have to obey God rather than men. When the laws of the state violate the laws of God, Christians rise up and they say enough of this. There are 3 words in the book of Acts chapter 17 that many of us have missed. It says that the disciples defied Caesar's decrees. Think with me for just a moment how powerful that was, because as you know, you probably have heard this before. In the first century, the question was, is Jesus Lord or is Caesar Lord? So the Greek phrase was Caesar Kurios or Jesus Kurios. And the way you answered that would determine whether or not you live or die. The first century church said Jesus is Lord, and they were willing to die for truth. I also shared that story with you about the battles, because when they started happening all over New England, no one called George Washington and said, George, we need your help here, bring in the military. The local church, the local people said, we will protect our community. That's what they did. They were willing to say, we're going to take this into our own hands to protect our community against tyranny. And that's what I'm asking all of you to do tonight. Do the same thing. I'm going around the state of Michigan telling people it doesn't matter where they are, it doesn't matter what battle you're fighting, whether it's at the school board, whether it's the mask mandates, whatever it is, rise up, people, and do it. Mm-hmm. There were less than 10% of Americans involved in the Revolutionary War. That's not very many, but they took over. They beat down tyranny. If we rise up as Michiganders and we say enough is enough, we're going to go a long way and we will make it happen. It's been said, and it's a study that's true, each person in this room has the ability to change 10 people's minds. If each one of us goes out of here and we say, look, we need you to vote in the next election. Don't let your friends say we're not going to vote. We won big 2 weeks ago. Don't let your friends say, why vote? It was stolen, it doesn't matter. No, the point is, if each one of us, as I go around the state, I'm telling people, if each one of us gets 10 people to vote in favor of a Republican candidate, Lord willing, that would be me. If you get 10 people to vote, we're going to take this. The Democrats won't even know how to deal with algorithms. It's going to blow it out of the water because, as I talked about at the beginning, 329 million people, 64% registered. You can win on 17%, 1 out of 8. If we understand that and we show up in mass, August 2nd next year to vote, we're going to turn this thing around and people are going to say, what happened in Michigan? 2 quick things. My brother, you mentioned people stand up and say, I'm willing to give my life for the Republic. There were people who were willing to do that in the Revolutionary War. They didn't have any military history, but there were pastors who stood up. They were called the Black Robe Regiment. Peter Muhlenberg did that. He preached his last sermon on January 21st, 6 months before they signed the Declaration of Independence. He preached his last sermon. He took off his robe, and underneath he had on a military uniform. And he said, who's going with me? My friends, that's my question for you folks today. I am willing to put my life on the line because I don't want my grandkids to fight this battle. I'm willing to put my life on the line. I don't need 6 black Escalades following me around, acting like I'm all this, because I'm not afraid of living and walking among people because that's who I am. And if we band together, we can turn this thing around for the glory of God. And here's my last point. I have found in my own ministry, as well as I'm sure you would all agree, when you get God right, your life gets right. When you get God right, culture follows. I invite you to join with me, and together let's make Michigan a lighthouse to the nation. Thank you.